LA City Church Youth. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the trial of Jesus, continuing our series on the Easter story. So over the past few days we've looked at, Ellie spoke to us about Palm Sunday and how Jesus rode into the city on a donkey to display peace. He didn't ride in because he was tired, he rode in because riding on a donkey was a way of a king showing peace as he entered the city. And he spoke to us about the Last Supper and how Jesus all along knew that Judas would betray him. But up until the very last seconds, Jesus still showed him friendship. And Joe spoke to us about the betrayal and how Judas betrayed Jesus, his role in that. So after Jesus' arrest, he was brought before the Sanhedrin. Who are the Sanhedrin? They are, or were, a collection of Jewish leaders and priests who would come together to form like a judge's court. Jesus was taken before them and they were trying to decide what he would be trialed for because he hadn't committed a crime. In Matthew 26 verse 59 it talks about how the Sanhedrin couldn't think of a reason to have Jesus killed, so they went out and they were bribing people to come in and bring false testimonies against Jesus so that they had a reason to have him killed, but none of these stood. At the end of the trial, the chief priest said to Jesus, "Is it true? Are you the Son of God?" To which Jesus replied, "I am." And this is all they needed. This is what they took Jesus to Pilate for blasphemy. Now, who was Pilate? Pilate was the man in charge. He was the man sent by the Romans to look after that area of their empire. He was the man that would crush any uprisings, would punish any criminals, and he was the man that would decide on what Jesus' punishment would be. Now Pilate, after hearing their testimonies against Jesus, didn't think this was a good enough reason to have a man killed, and he said to them, in one of the Gospels it says how Pilate says to the crowds, "I'll just have him beaten, there's no need to kill this man," but they didn't like this and they demanded that he had a stronger punishment. So Pilate said, "It's out of my hands, I don't want this anymore," and he ordered a bowl of water to be brought to him so that he could symbolically wash his hands of Jesus' blood to show that he had no hand in what was going to happen to Jesus anymore. It was out of his hands. Now through all of this, through both trials, Jesus stayed silent. In the face of all of the accusers, all of the false accusations, and all of the false testimonies, he stayed silent, which goes in line with the prophecy from Isaiah 53 verse 7, which talks about how Jesus would be silent in the face of his accusers. Now this wasn't because he wanted to go through the pain and suffering of being crucified or being killed. It's because he knew this was his role. He knew that ultimately that's why he was sent to us, was to die for our sins. This was the role that was laid out before him from the start. Now we know this because he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, "Not my will but yours be done." He didn't want to die. He didn't want to leave his friends behind. He didn't want to be crucified, but this was what had to happen. Now at the time it was custom that the Jewish people could ask for one of the prisoners to be set free. So when they were asked, "Who would you like to be set free in this time of Passover?" the Sanhedrin began chanting, "We want Barabbas." They asked for Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a man who was a murderer. He had been involved with another uprising and he had murdered people. But this is who the crowd chanted for: "We want Barabbas back." And so Pilate said, "Well, what do you want me to do with this King of the Jews? What do you want me to do with Jesus?" And they shouted, "Crucify him." So Pilate asked, "Well, on what charge? What charge shall I crucify him for?" But they just shouted all the louder, "Crucify him, crucify him." And so Pilate, to stop the chanting, gave them Barabbas and took Jesus away to be crucified. And why did Jesus do this? He did it for us so that we wouldn't have to experience it ourselves. He did it, he took the cross on himself so that we wouldn't have to experience the pain and trauma that comes with our sinful lives. He put himself in harm's way to protect us. Now, what I'd like you to do for your challenge for today is that I'd like to encourage you to spend some time today to think about and pray for anyone you might know who's facing something scary and intimidating at the moment. For example, anyone working in the NHS, or any key workers who are putting themselves at risk so that others can be safe. I'd just like you to spend some time alone or with someone in your family or one of the other youth, talking about it and praying for people that we know through church or you might know otherwise. I'd just like you to spend some time to pray for them. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all at youth later on today. See you soon.